I'm Yashmyn Jackson. I am a freelance editor based in Detroit. I have had a number of careers, but I always come back to editing. It's where I'm happiest. It's where I feel I give a lot of value to folks who are trying to communicate messages to other people. Commas are important in a legal text for the same reason that other components of the English language is. Just as words are important, just as the arrangement of words are important, so is punctuation. And something I like to describe as a punctuation workhorse is the comma. It has so many different purposes, and when it's used correctly, just as when words themselves are used correctly and in the appropriate places, they can really clarify whatever message it is you're trying to convey. In terms of legal texts, especially things like statutes and contracts, it is extremely important to use the comma appropriately, because if somebody has to interpret that contract or the statute, and you hope that somebody does have to interpret those things, or else what is their importance, particularly with statutes, the correct use of that comma, of any punctuation, will make sure that the law or that the contract is being applied the way it should be, so that it's serving the purpose that whoever formed that document intended it to serve. A document that legislators have come together to create, to form a law, or a contract that different parties have come together to negotiate and to draft and to sign and say, this is the documentation of our relationship with each other. These are texts, these are items that are important to at least those parties, or to at least that particular legislature and the people they represent. So they want for that document to very concisely, very clearly, without any ambiguity, represent what it is they're trying to convey. And if a comma is out of place, just as if a word is out of place, that can affect the interpretation of that document, and in a negative way. And unfortunately, a lot of time is spent in courts with judges trying to interpret documents, statutes, contracts, that if they had been written clearly when they were first negotiated and drafted, would not take up so much of the court's time. In some cases, when the court has to interpret, when it has to construe a contract, and in some cases even a statute, it may not be the case that at the time the parties just didn't draft it very clearly. In some instances, and this happens sometimes with patents as well, it may be that the drafter of the document intentionally left a little ambiguity or left a little vagueness because it was to their benefit at the time, or they perceived it to be to their benefit at the time, to leave it open to interpretation. Maybe they thought that somebody else would argue against the passage of the document or the completion of the document if the document were too clear. So there are usually so many very interesting factors that come into play with respect to writings and where punctuation is placed and how the actual document is worded. So the 26th Amendment has two clauses, and the first clause reads this way: the right of citizens of the United States, who are 18 years of age or older, to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age. So that is the first clause or section. And the purpose of the 26th Amendment to the United States Constitution is wonderful. The motivation behind it is that up until this point, 18-year-olds did not have the guaranteed right to vote. And this is in 1971 that the 26th Amendment was ratified. And it was about this time, as many folks who are listening to this right now probably are already realizing, that the Vietnam War was happening. And there were so many young people who were not old enough to vote, who were drafted into the Army. Not everybody was drafted, but my point is that there were all these 18-year-olds who were going to Vietnam and who were dying but who did not have the right to vote under the U.S. Constitution. So for that reason and for related reasons, folks here in the U.S. said, we need to change that. And the 26th Amendment it had one of the shortest ratification times of all the amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The amendment itself had a very good motivation. However, the way that it was worded, the way that it still is worded, it's not saying exactly what it's intended to say. Again, the right of citizens of the United States, comma, who are 18 years of age or older, comma, to vote, etc. What this is saying is that citizens of the United States are 18 years of age or older. So if you're 17 or younger, you are out of luck. That is clearly not what the 26th Amendment is trying to say. Nobody realistically, reasonably interprets it that way. This is an example of something that I really don't think is ever going to go to court. Nobody is going to say, wait a minute, all these children who are here and who we're treating as citizens, they shouldn't have any rights of citizenship. That's not going to happen. However, imagine a clause like this in a contract between two parties or in a statute where one party is saying it means one thing and another party, usually like the state itself or the U.S., is saying it means another. The judges in the court in that instance might not want to presume that they understand what the actual meaning behind the document was. So that turns into a court case where the judges are left to determine, based in large part on punctuation, and in this case, based pretty much on the punctuation, pretty much solely on punctuation. And I want to say, just so that I can define what this is, with these commas here, what we've got is a non-restrictive clause. A non-restrictive clause is a clause that gives some parenthetical information about the clause that came before, versus a restrictive clause, such as what I believe was intended here with the 26th Amendment. Listen to this reading of the 26th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote, etc., etc. Now, without the commas, that same text that previously was in between the commas is restrictive. It's saying simply citizens of the U.S. who are 18 years of age or older. So there's a presumption that citizens don't have to be 18 years of age or older. It's just that the ones who are 18 years of age or older have the right to vote. So now I will say the 26th Amendment, even if the commas were removed, and perhaps especially if the commas were removed, could use a little redrafting. This is, I think, I know I work with a team of editors who could find a nice way to form this more concisely and cleanly. But this is just an example of the way in which commas, if inappropriately used, can add unnecessary time and angst to the process of identifying what a text message is, what its intended message is. And we haven't even talked about the serial comma.